I have with us today Mr. Mark, Ms. Alsop, Ms. Sheffield Duffield, and Ms. Faber. Ms. Faber and Ms. Sheffield Duffield are the CASA volunteers for these cases. Ms. Alsop, I think this is your motion to kind of tell me where we're going. We've apparently got some procedural issues that you're trying to remedy.
Yes, Your Honor. In regards to this case, there were some procedural issues involving the final orders, essentially, of these three children, Michaela, Jasmine, and Amelia. It is set out in my motion to dismiss or non-suit petitions to modify the prior order that was filed in this case in November. Essentially, what appears to have happened is that in an effort to not muddy waters by saying cause numbers over and over again, I'm just going to reference them as original cause and then new cause, which...
Okay, for me, can you refer to it as the 2018 case and the 2020 case?
That would be perfect. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, no worries.
In this case, there was essentially final orders rendered in the 2018 case. Subsequent to that, a new petition was filed, a new removal was filed into the 2020 case. Inadvertently, well, going back, final orders were rendered in the 2020 case. A motion to modify then needed to be filed because in that case, PMC went to the department. Subsequent to that, when a motion to modify was filed, it appears that motions to modify were filed in both the 2018 as well as the 2020 case. Amended motions to modify were also filed in both cases. There were some
contemporaneously,
virtually within a few days or a week of each other, Judge. Also, just so the court is also aware, some reports and some filings, also a couple of miscellaneous filings also got filed erroneously in the 2018 case.
They should have been in the 2020 case?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Like a permanency hearing report or something like that. Okay. Subsequently to that, a final order overall was reached in this case on September 9th, 2022.
Which case?
It should have been, and it was called by this court in the 2020 case. Unfortunately, it was filed in the 2018 case. So what the state has done, I have filed a motion to dismiss or non-suit petitions in the 2018 case because those did not need to happen. And that would include the original motion to modify as well as the first amended motion to modify in the 2018 case, because essentially once there were final orders in that case, nothing should have been filed. And I have also filed an order to correcting a clerical mistake in regards to the 2020 case, by which the order that had been signed on September 9th, 2022 was erroneously filed in the 2018 case, should have been filed in the 2020 case. So I have essentially filed a motion to dismiss and non-suit petitions and modifications, all modification petitions, including the amended petition in the 2018 case. I filed a motion, and there is a order that was also filed at that time for that. I've also filed a motion to correct clerical error or clerical mistake in the 2020 case to reflect the order from 2018 as being the 2020 case. I also did a corrected final order for the 2020 case, Judge.
Okay. Let me tell you what I think I understand. And yes, what I think I understand you trying to do, and I'm going to take them one case at a time. I'm going to talk about the 2018 case first. The 2018 case final order, subsequent, there was a motion to modify and an amended motion to modify, and nothing ever happened on those things. They just kind of sat out there. Am I with you so far?
Yes, Your Honor. The court never called the 2018 case. Nothing should have happened on those cases at all.
Okay. And nothing should have happened on those cases.
Correct.
And now we'll get to what happened.
Yes.
2020 case, there's a final order. A subsequent motion to modify was filed. An amended motion to modify was filed. An agreement was reached in the 2020 case, but filed in the 2018 case. And now we basically need a nunc pro tunc to correct those clerical errors and make sure the 2020 final order based on that amended motion to modify is filed correctly into 2020 case. And that would date back to the rendition of that order on September 29th, 2022, but for the fact that it was filed in a companion case that it shouldn't have been filed in.
Correct, Judge.
Okay. And you've got an order to dismiss the 18 case, which should take care of the 18 case?
Yes, Your Honor. I filed a motion to dismiss or non-suit petitions to modify in the 2018 case, and it did delineate both the original as well as the amended motion to modify, which obviously would mean that there would be no active petition at that point for any filings subsequent to that.
Okay, so no active filings in the 18 case will get taken care of. Does the 18 case survive? Are there still children under the age of 18, or that case will be completely closed?
That case should be completely closed because there are orders at all, Judge.
Okay, so you got that waiting for me, and
Yes,
the nunc pro tunc and the subsequent corrected orders will take care of all that.
yes, Judge.
Okay, Mr. Mark, any reason to disagree with your colleague?
Judge, I concur with Ms. Alsop. She's correct.
Most exceptional. And nobody's heard from any of the other lawyers who may be still in this case. Nobody objects to anything.
No, Your Honor. The only attorney that still is in this case is Mr. Flournoy, and I sent the information to him just out of an abundance of caution. It had been e-filed and sent to him, but I have not heard anything from him or his office.
Okay. Ms. Faber, you have something?
Is this going to essentially close this case? Because the problem with the modification, that it was never actually signed, is they have been 15 months not getting PCA benefits or foster care payments. So
I can't answer that question because that's a different question really than what we need to address procedurally here. That's something that you need to take up with the ad litem with the department. Okay. Ms. Alsop, have you filed all that stuff?
Yes, Your Honor. Actually, all of this was filed back in November. I believe November 16th.
If you will do me the courtesy of making sure that you and Mr. Mark agree on which orders need my attention. I can pull the motions and everything, and I've got notes, but I want to make sure I've got the right orders for the right cases, and I will sign them in the order that I need to make sure it's clear with the district clerk's office what's going on.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, is that it for that County docket? Everyone agreed that this could happen by Zoom, and I've got special permission to allow that to happen. For those of you who are joining us on YouTube or otherwise participating in the Zoom formatted hearing, this is a court proceeding. All the same rules and regulations apply equally to everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're on YouTube or Zoom or however you're hearing us or seeing us or any combination thereof. You're in the courtroom. If you're in the courtroom, there's no recording. That's by court order. And if you do record, you're violating that court order, and that violation can cost you up to a $500 fine per violation and or up to a 6-month stay in the county jail per violation. So please do not do that. I have with us today John Weissmuller, Katrina Mitchell, Shelley Trewick, Don Shapaka, Michael Mark, Ira Carrillo, Scarlett Cavazos, Gracie Stewart, Damari Scroggins, Jonathan Allen and Morgan Allen on the same device, Megan Farr, Gunnar Farr, and Luann Tatum for Scott Tatum. Did I miss anybody? All right. Miss Pack, I'm gonna let you go first on your motion for monitored return.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I call Scarlett. Have you been the caseworker since the beginning, or when did you start?
Yes, since the beginning.
And this case was filed in April of this year, correct?
Correct.
So we're about 7-8 months into the case.
Correct.
And I filed a motion for monitored return as to the youngest children only, which are DF and RF. And you saw that, correct?
Correct.
And DF and RF they're not twins, but they were both born in 2022, correct?
Correct.
One at the beginning of the year and one at the end of the year.
Yes, ma'am.
So one of the kids is DF is almost 2 and RF recently turned 1, correct?
Correct.
And the older 2 children, LA and EA, have already been placed with their biological father, Jonathan Allen, correct?
Correct.
And they live in Angelina County and everything is going well there.
Yes.
And the younger two children that are the subject of this motion, DF and RF, they are currently in a foster home in the Houston area.
Correct.
And their parents are Megan Farr and Gunnar Farr, who are also here on this Zoom hearing, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, Megan and Gunnar have both finished everything on their family plan of service. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And briefly, what did those things include?
Parenting classes, individual counseling, a psychological evaluation, ADAC services, random drug testing. We also asked that they have stable housing and employment.
And Megan and Gunnar are a couple and they do have stable housing, correct?
Correct.
And they're both currently employed.
Yes, ma'am.
They finished the parenting classes.
Yes.
And in fact, they continue to take parenting classes of their own volition because they wanted to keep learning.
Yes, ma'am.
And drugs weren't an issue in this case.
Correct.
So the parents have consistently tested clean on all the drug screens.
Yes, ma'am.
And they finished their counseling and their psychologicals.
Correct.
Have you been to the home?
I have.
Okay, and is it safe and appropriate?
Yes.
Okay, and that home is also here in Angelina County?
Yes, ma'am.
So my client Megan was getting visits with the kids because there was no drug issue. She was getting in-person visits really early on in the case, correct?
Correct.
And you had to coordinate the kids, getting the kids from Houston to Lufkin or meeting in the middle?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you observe the visits between Megan and the kids?
I did.
Okay. And were they appropriate, safe?
Yes, ma'am, they were.
And did Gunnar go to those visits as well?
Initially, there was a time where he did separate visits, but then they did come together and have visits together. So yes, he did.
And as of the last month or so, the two young children, DF and RF, have had unsupervised weekend visits in the home of Megan and Gunnar Farr. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry, when did they start, Ms. Shapaka?
And they started how long ago, Miss Scarlett?
November 23rd.
So this past weekend was the third successful weekend visit?
Yes, ma'am.
And were the visits in the home of Megan and Gunnar Farr from Friday to Sunday, or how did they work?
Friday to Sunday, with the exception of the Thanksgiving holiday. They spent Thanksgiving, so Thursday through Saturday.
Okay, so about 3 days, about 3-day weekends, and they've had three of those consecutive weekends. 3 consecutive weekends.
Yes, ma'am.
And have those visits gone well?
Yes.
Were you able to communicate with Megan about the visits?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did the transportation coordinate since the kids are so far away?
The department, brought them to the visit. We dropped off at the parents' house, and then, the parents, with the help of Angela McIntyre, the, paternal grandmother, transported the children back.
Okay, so it's a lot of transportation with the kids, with them being so far away.
Yes.
On the visits. Okay. With the siblings being with the older two siblings being with Jonathan Allen and his wife, how do you coordinate sibling visits?
Myself and Casa got together with Miss McIntyre, Miss Farr, and Mr. Allen to coordinate sibling visits, because there were a lot of moving pieces, of course. And then I believe they have one scheduled on their own for this Saturday.
This coming up Saturday.
Yes, ma'am.
So what is the department's position about for the judge ordering a monitored return to Megan and Gunnar Farr starting this weekend?
I believe the department would like to see one more unsupervised visit go well, overnight visit, sorry, and that the visit that the parents coordinated together go well without any intervention needed from CASA or CPS.
Okay, so the department's position is for there to be another weekend visit this coming up weekend, Friday to Sunday, and
Correct.
let the parents, being Megan Farr and Jonathan Allen, coordinate a sibling visit and see if that goes well.
Yes.
And assuming that goes well, when would the department's suggestion for the monitored return begin?
Possibly the following week if the CASA and Attorney Lyden were in agreement.
Possibly the following weekend, because the parents want the children home for Christmas, correct?
Correct.
Is there anything that Megan has not done that you've asked her to do?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And does she keep in communication with you?
Yes, ma'am.
And she's completed everything on her plan of service?
Correct.
Okay, and there haven't been any drug issues at all in this case?
Correct.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Mr. Mark, any questions?
No questions, Judge. Thank you.
Mr. Weissmueller?
Thank you, ma'am. Just a few questions. Has Mr. Farr done everything he's supposed to be doing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there anything else that he needs to do for you?
Not at this time.
Okay, he's got a job, the home's fine, he's got transportation, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and
Although he is not allowed to transport the children.
okay, so but how's the visits been going? Have you observed them with
The visits
him?
have been,
They've been fine.
yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you. I'll pass the witness. Thank you.
Ms. Tatum, any questions?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Carrillo, any questions?
Yes, Judge.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you mentioned that he wasn't allowed to transport the children. Why
Correct.
not?
We're talking
He
about
does not.
Farr.
Mr. Farr, correct.
Yes, ma'am. He does not have a valid license.
Okay, what about Ms. Farr?
She does not have a valid license.
So how is transportation for these children supposed to occur?
Yes, Ms. Crow. We filed a safety plan prior to the overnight unsupervised visitation. It states that Ms. Farr and Mr. Farr will need to utilize approved backup caregivers and transporters. The two that they have provided to us are Angela McIntyre and Barbara Scroggins.
And Ms. Cavazos, I haven't had a chance to go through this in my file just yet based on the information I just received, but am I correct that there was previously like a home study with Ms. McIntyre done, correct?
Correct.
And that home study did not go through?
Correct.
But we're going to have her do the transportation for the children.
Yes, ma'am. The issue with Ms. McIntyre was her husband, and it states in the safety plan that he is not allowed to be transporting the children or around them alone.
Okay. Do we know if these children are going to be enrolled in daycare if the court does in fact grant a monitored return?
The parents stated that they would not be in daycare. One will be working nights and the other one days, and then utilizing approved caregivers for additional help when needed.
So who would be the approved caregivers?
Angela McIntyre is approved, but it would have to be at their home. Again, as her husband is not allowed to be with the children alone. And Barbara Scroggins is the other.
Has a background check been done on Ms. Scroggins as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Everything come back clear on her?
Yes, ma'am.
When you say background check, Ms. Carrillo, are you talking about a fingerprint background check or just one that they do for Texas?
Ideally, a fingerprint check if they're going to be around the children, Judge. So a
Well,
fingerprint check.
let's get that question answered with let's get that question a little more specific so we're all talking about the same things, please.
We'll ask it again. Has Ms. Scroggins had a fingerprint background check?
No.
Okay. Okay, so who's working days and who's working nights?
Right at this moment, they're still both working days. I believe Miss Farr stated she would be working nights.
And so let's say an emergency came up with the children where if they had to be taken to the ER or something, is Ms. McIntyre going to be available at all times for them?
I can't speak to at all times. I believe that they would reach out to one or the other.
Okay. We touched a little bit on the sibling visit. So as you're aware, there's currently part of the bond conditions for the FARs are that they're not supposed to have any contact with the older children, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so has there been a plan developed on how that's going to occur to make sure that we follow those bond conditions and the children don't have any contact with Mr. and Mrs. Farr?
Yes, ma'am. Miss McIntyre meets with Mr. Allen or Miss Allen for the sibling visitation with the two younger children.
Okay. Do we have any concerns with the children being so young and not being able to express any concerns if we're going to put them back in the home for extended periods of time?
They are very young and not verbal. So I think that would be my concern, is that they're not able to vocalize themselves if something were to occur that we weren't able to see.
You'd have to rely on the FARs strictly to tell you something, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in your opinion, you think one more overnight visit and then transitioning into a monitored return is in the best interest of the children?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a possibility of doing something that may be something more gradual than that? Has the department discussed that at all?
Not a more gradual plan, but it could be discussed.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Any other questions, Mr. Pecca?
Just for clarification, so Megan has two backup drivers, her mother-in-law and also her grandmother, Miss McIntyre and Miss Scroggins.
Correct.
And she's in the process of reinstating her license pending fees out of I think Huntington.
See who, Mr. Pecca?
I'm sorry, Miss Megan Farr is in the process of getting her license restated when she can get all her fees paid. Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh. And again, both of these parents have done everything on their plan of service, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So there's not really a justification for not returning the kids.
Based on completion of the family plan, no.
Which is the point of CPS, correct? Making sure that they do everything that you ask them to do, correct?
Correct.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Anything, Mr. Mark? Mr. Weissmueller?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Ms. Tatum?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Carrillo?
No, Judge.
Okay, well, I got a question. If everything's so hunky-dory, why do we need to stay in this case, Ms. Cavazos? What is the barriers for me returning these children today? Are there any remaining concerns that would cause the department concerns about me wanting to return these children today, as I'm required to do if there's no concerns?
Well, the children are young and vulnerable, and like I said, they are not verbal at this time. I think it would be in their best interest for us to monitor them and see that the parents are able to effectively parent them in their home again. So that's where I'm at right now. And then to see that with their support system, they're able to continue caring for these children and get them to where they need to be safely and appropriately.
Have fingerprint background checks been done on Miss McIntyre or Miss Scroggins, not Miss Damari, but the related lady, Miss Scroggins?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Creo, do you have anything further, Ms. Shapaka?
I'd like to briefly call my client.
Go ahead.
Megan, I lost you. Where are you at?
My phone got too hot, so I had to join with Gunner.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a few questions about this. You are the mom of all 4 of these kids, but today specifically we're talking about D, F, and RF, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And how have these last 3 weekend visits gone with the kids at your house?
Great. We've enjoyed them.
What did you do with the kids?
So like for the first 2 weekends that they came, we just kind of sat at home with them and we played and we cooked and we just enjoyed each other's company. This last weekend we just went camping, you know, let them play outside, be kids, have fun. We cooked, we snacked.
And you've done everything on your plan of service?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're taking additional parenting classes?
Yes, ma'am.
What have you learned from the parenting classes?
I feel like the biggest thing that like comes to mind when you ask me that is just like my co-parenting relationship. Because my relationships affect my kids, so how I act and how I go about how I co-parent with everyone involved. You know, my kids get reactions from me, so like how I feel, and then as they're learning and developing relationships as they get older, so they're watching us, and as they're getting older, they're like, oh, you know, like mom might have screamed when she got mad instead of staying cool, calm, and collected, so they know how to act and build relationships as they get older. Another thing is like getting down and speaking to them on their level, like so they understand better. So you're not like towering over them, like they can see face to face, eye to eye, like how you speak to your children matter.
So don't let her cheat, Mr. Gunner. Don't do that.
Every emotion that you feel like is not a bad emotion. So everything, like if you're mad about something, like you have a right to be mad and it should be talked about and discussed. If you're sad, happy, like however, like just every emotion is not a bad emotion.
So you feel like you've benefited from the parenting classes and it's helped you with your relationship with Mr. Allen as far as co-parenting the older 2 children.
Correct.
And I know you work right now, but if the judge was to do a monitored return or straight up give the kids back today, would you continue to work or would you stay home with them, or what's your plan?
Well, I really don't want to put my kids in daycare, so I would move to nights where Gunner could work days and I could work nights. So we wouldn't really necessarily need anybody unless our schedules just kind of didn't lap for like an hour.
And if that was the case, you have Miss Angela McIntyre, your mother-in-law, or your grandmother, Miss Barbara Scroggins, as caregivers.
Correct.
And how
then
I'm sorry.
We also have Carolyn Stackey.
Who's that?
Gunner's aunt.
And are you in the process of getting your driver's license back?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
And what do you have left to do?
So I had filed a inability to pay to the courts. I filed it in Lufkin and Huntington and Zavala. Lufkin has already approved it and dismissed them. Huntington has not. So I'm still just waiting on a court date for her. I called and asked, and she tells me that she'll send me a letter in the mail when she gets ready to have a court date.
And you did that back in March or April, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You've been able to utilize the Miss Angela McIntyre, Miss Barbara Scroggins, and Miss Carolyn Stackey as drivers. If you're not able to drive the kids, you're working on getting your driver's license back. What other means of transportation could you utilize if there was an emergency?
So if there's an absolute emergency and my kids needed to go to the ER just then and there, I would call 911 and get an ambulance.
Did you have Medicaid before the children were removed?
Correct.
And so assuming you get it back, does Medicaid provide transportation to doctor's visits and so forth?
Yes, ma'am, they do.
And you really want your kids home for Christmas. Is that accurate?
More than anything.
And you feel like you've worked hard and deserve that?
I do.
You completed your plan of service in what, 3 or 4 months?
Yes.
And are you asking the judge to return your kids today?
Yes, I am.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Anything, Mr. Moore?
No questions, Judge. Thank you.
Mr. Weissmuller,
No questions, Judge. Thank you.
Ms. Tatum,
No questions, Judge.
Ms. Correa.
No questions.
Okay. I got a question for Ms. Shapaka. If Ms. Farr is doing so well and Mr. Farr are doing so well, I think what I'm understanding is that everybody's kind of on the same page about wanting the goal to be that the two youngest children are reunited with Mr. Farr and Ms. Farr since they share a home together. Am I getting that right so far, guys?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Why in the world do you want to extend this 6 months if they're doing so good?
I filed the motion for monitored return because I think that Ms. Carrillo, the children's attorney, was slightly hesitant. So I filed that as opposed to just a
request for placement.
Yes, Judge.
Okay. All right. Ms. Carrillo, what say you?
I think Ms. Shapaka is right. I do have some reservations of just sending the kids over for an unknown number of consecutive days, really, on a monitored return. And it concerns me that they're young, they're not verbal, they can't express what's going on. We don't have enough information on these other individuals. We don't have the fingerprint background checks. It caused me concern knowing that Ms. McIntyre was an individual listed to help with their transportation after that home study was denied. So I don't know that for the children's sake, I'm ready for us to just send them back over, even with just one more unsupervised visit. I mean, that's just a limited number of days that the department still has that ability to drop the children off and pick them back up, and we're able to observe them and see if there's anything that's happened where after a visit with their parents. Whereas with the monitored return, while the department can drop in, it may not be as frequent as it is right now with the supervised return. So I'm just really hesitant about it, Judge. Unsupervised weekends.
Ms. Trey, where do you fall on all this?
I have a number of concerns. Transportation being one of them. I want the kids to be safe when they're being transported anywhere or during an emergency. I made a visit to the Farr home last month. It was colder inside their home than it was outside their home. I assumed they would have it warm for the babies when they come. I mean, they are one. They easily can get sick. We don't want that.
You share a lot of the same concerns as Ms. Carrillo, is what I'm hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. This is what I think I want to do. If you guys are all think we're on the road to a monitored return, what I would like, Ms. Shapaka, is that we do it on a transitional basis, not on a straight up right now. I would like very much in that transitional proposal that there is the question about whether or not the two folks, Ms. Scroggins, not Ms. Damari, Ms. Scroggins, the grandmother or the aunt, and Ms. McIntyre, that there are that those fingerprint background checks are done, that there is something in writing about what the responsibilities and duties are for each of those two ladies to help, including but not limited to something in writing that they all sign, that Ms. McIntyre's husband, whoever that gentleman is that is of concern, has no access to these children. That's in there. And where there's a plan to either, if we need a monitored return down the road, then we can ask for that, or this transitional thing for the two youngest children can turn into a placement and or a resolution. That's kind of what I'm thinking. There's too many still unanswered questions about. I do not want to set Mr. Farr and Ms. Farr up for failure. They have worked far too hard to do that to him at this juncture, or at any juncture for that matter. But maybe we can come up with a plan. You guys come up with a plan that everybody signs off on. Then we can think about that. But the other thing that I'm weighing is is this truly a monitored return, or is this a transition to placement with Mr. Farr and Ms. Farr that does not include them having another 6 months on this case? Okay. I do have a couple more questions. It looks like I had back a good while back had DNA testing for Mr. Farr and both kids. I have one in the file, but I don't have DNA testing results for the other child. Has Mr. Farr been confirmed to be the father by genetic testing, and I just am missing one of the results? Where are we on that, Mr. Mark? Do you know? Mr. Weissmuller, do you know?
Don't know, Judge.
So I thought that Mr.
I'm
Farr
looking-
was on the birth certificate for both of his children. It was Mr. Allen who was
Okay. Well, then
on.
so who has eyeballed the birth certificate or birth verification for the children whose last name
We have.
is Farr? Ms. Scroggins, you can represent to the court that you personally have physically eyeballed those things?
Yes, ma'am. All four birth certificates. And the only thing that was missing was Mr. Allen being on the birth certificate for Inslee, in which he took a DNA test and he was the father.
Okay, so paternity has been established. That's not in question anymore. Everybody's good to go for all four of these kids. We just need to make those findings at some point in the future.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. With that said, and Mr. Farr's paternity apparently not in question for the two older children, where are we on getting the Bureau of Indian Affairs notice out because Mr. Farr identified potential Cherokee heritage back in May? Mr. Mark? I did not see anything in the court's file that it had been, or there any the Bureau notice had been sent and filed, or that any response had been received from either the Bureau of Indian Affairs or any of the potential Cherokee tribes that might be.
It does not appear so, Judge.
Okay. Bureau of Indian Affairs notice needs to get out from the department, whether it's you, Mr. Mark, or the department lawyers, needs to get out not later than close of business tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Allen, what do you know what Cherokee tribe or what state that your folks might be related to?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Mark, there is a questionnaire in the court's file. It remains as vague as poor Mr. Allen's response there. So I think the Bureau of Indian Affairs is the only notice that may, unless y'all come up with something else, but it needs to
Yes,
go out
ma'am.
at 12 o'clock tomorrow
Yes, ma'am.
and give notice to everybody. All right. Any reason that Mr. Allen, for the two children that he is biologically related to, and Ms. Farr, and the rest of you guys that have interest in those two kiddos, can't go to mediation and try to get that resolved and put a nice neat bow on it by January 10th? So Mr. Allen is not looking at another 6 months involved in this case if a monitored return is granted. Would that solve that problem, Ms. Tatum?
Judge, well, I'm here on behalf of my brother Scott, and he'd like to have those two kids in that case severed out of this one in case there is that. I mean,
Well,
Mr.
I'm not.
Allen's
He
he's
is
a non-offending parent.
I get that, Ms. Tatum, but I'm not going to duplicate efforts right now, which is exactly what that would be if I had two cases kind of in the same spot, which is why I'm going to order y'all to mediation by January 10th, 2024. And we will have we've got a hearing set for the permanency before final. And if you guys can resolve that on your own, Ms. Tatum, then that case would be resolved and we can sever it after we get a resolution, but we probably need a final order before we do that. Okay. So I'm ordering the
Yes,
folks
ma'am.
that are involved in the two Allen children. You guys need to mediate by on or before January 10th. And if you guys get it resolved, then we can take that up on the 16th. We're back for the permanency review. But I would like y'all to have the opportunity to get that all resolved before we talk about severances. Okay. All right.
Yes, ma'am. I have to be
So-
excused. I've got two other judges waiting on me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right. So
Thank you.
mediation by the 10th of January for the Allen children and a transitional monitored return, transitional plan for placement. Any reason we can't take that up on the 16th, Ms. Shapaka?
Yeah, I'd like to have something set more in stone, and since we are at odds, and there, I think I don't agree with.
Have y'all even tried to talk about holiday visitation? Because that seems where this is going. That seems to be the real question right now, is holiday visitation.
Right. Well, I mean, the department said to have another visit this weekend and then return them possibly on a monitored return starting for the Christmas vacation.
I understand that, but the ad litem and the guardian ad litem are not on board with that. So have you guys talked about developing an agreement for holiday visitation for the two younger children?
No, I sent out an email Friday and I didn't get a response. So.
Okay. I suspect that you guys need to try to figure something out, and it needs to be in writing. If y'all have an agreement, it needs to be in writing what the parameters are, so everybody's on the same page and there aren't any questions. And probably need to get that done if you can before the 19th, because that will be the last hearing date in Angelina County before the holidays.
So they already have visits every weekend.
Okay.
With the kids. So you're saying to get a transitional, to get, I guess I'm confused about what you want filed.
Okay. So what I would like to hear about on January 16th, in addition to the permanency review before final, I would like, if there's proposed, you don't have to agree. If y'all have an agreement, that's great. But if you don't have an agreement, I need proposals about transitioning these children more than weekends into Mr. and Mrs. Farr's home. If y'all can't, if y'all can't agree on that, then we can have a hearing on it on the 16th. If y'all can't agree on it, then we'll talk about that and we'll figure out whether or not it really should be a transitional monitored return, or if it can be a transitional placement, because I don't want these children to stay in care a second longer than is absolutely necessary. If in the interim y'all can agree on holiday possession, if everybody's on the same page with every other weekend, that's fine. If y'all want to modify that some way, shape, or form to take into consideration the holidays, that's fine. If y'all can't agree on it, then you need to let Lenny Bachmeyer know so she can get it on the schedule on the 19th, because that is the last hearing date before the holidays.
So they're still going to get them every weekend. It's not every other, it's every weekend until then.
Whatever it is, if everybody's on the same page, I'm not going to do anything to change that. What I'm saying is I am not ordering a placement with Mr. and Mrs. Farr. I'm not granting or not granting a monitored return. I need more information. It sounds like both Ms. Carrillo and Ms. Trawick also need more information. And if you guys can all get together between now and the 16th of January and come up with an agreed plan for some kind of transition of the two younger children into the Farr's home, then I'll be happy to consider it on that date when we have the permanency hearing. If the children are being seen unsupervised by Mr. and Mrs. Farr every weekend, I think your holiday possession is figured out because they're getting them every weekend.
Right. Okay.
Anything else from anybody? So I'm not granting or not granting it, Ms. Shapaka, as far as your monitored return. Y'all come back with a plan and I'll be happy to reconsider it on the 16th. Okay.
On January 16th. Okay.
On January 16th. Yes.
Okay.
Can't work out holiday stuff. Y'all need to get it set on the 19th, because that's the last hearing before the holidays. This is a motion to participate.
Okay.
First things first, Mr. Wright, were you guys able to serve all of the necessary parties?
We were not, Judge.
Okay. You want to put on your efforts?
Yes, ma'am. I can represent to the court as an officer of the court that we sent out citation. I believe I'm trying to read it. Looks like December 7th to the Sheriff's Department, and they have been unable to serve Ms. Washington thus far.
So the return indicates that they've not been able to serve her?
Yes, ma'am. The citation return is blank, indicating they have not served her as of yet.
Okay. All right. When was the motion to participate filed?
I believe, Judge, that was filed. Looks like 11/29, Judge, or thereabouts.
Okay. All right. I will do this since these cases are on a shorter time frame. I'm going to reset this to December 19th. Either make sure that everybody's been served, or you're taking the necessary steps to find other means to get those folks served by then. Very good. Okay. So
Yes, ma'am.
a very happy little birdie told me that you guys were able to resolve this matter in its entirety this morning at mediation. Is that your understanding, Mr. Mark?
Yes, Your Honor, that is exactly my understanding.
Mr. Buffkin?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Riley?
Yes, Your Honor.
Miss Blythewood?
Yes, Your Honor, all issues.
And Mr. Cargill?
Yes, Your Honor, all issues.
Okay, Miss Blythewood, Mr. Cargill, who wants to do the honors?
I'll let Ms. Blythewood.
Miss Blythewood, do you have it handy? I know you're kind of, we found you.
I got tracked down. No,
Okay.
that's not a problem.
Okay.
And my understanding of the agreement, whenever you're ready, Your Honor,
Go ahead.
is that the interveners will be the sole managing conservators of the children. The parents will be possessory conservators of the children. The visitation and access will be every Wednesday for an hour and a half. And that would be I'm not looking at the agreement, but that would be at the visitation center in Tyler. And then there would be 2 virtual visits a week. Child support will be $100 per parent. The interveners will carry the children on insurance and any out of pocket, and they'll be responsible for the deductible as well as the premiums. And any out of pockets will be 50% interveners and 50% the parents, 25% of course to mom, 25% to dad. And then the rest of us get dismissed out. And that's my understanding of the agreement. And somebody correct me if I'm missing something because it's not in front of me.
Mr. Cargill, is that what you understood?
A couple of things in addition to that, Your Honor. The visitation supervised, and then there is a special visitation in which the interveners will transport the children to the mother's grandfather for a visit on December 27th to run with their regular visit, but it will last 2 hours so that they can meet their grandfather because he's having medical issues.
As supplemented, I also see there's also provisions for drug testing.
There is, Your Honor. I apologize.
That's okay. And everybody's going to use app close.
Yes. In fact, the parents had downloaded it before they left Mr. Reisinger's office.
Perfect. Okay. All right. And this document contains the electronic signatures through DocuSign of Christina Kilgore, Michael Mark, Damari Scroggins, Crystal Riley, Michael Reisinger, Amy Blythewood, Rachel Jacoby, Mark Cargill, Christina Cargill Coker, Michael Coker, James Buffkin, David Britton, Laura Huerta, and Lisa Ellerman. And that looks like it is all the lawyers, all the department personnel, all the CASAs, and each of the individuals, the mom, the dad, and the interveners. That's everybody. And y'all expect to have, the department is required to, or identified as the drafter of the documents, and it'll be ready for entry on January 16th.
Yes, ma'am. We'll have it by then. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we've got rights and duties taken care of. We've got possession and access taken care of. We've got child support and insurance taken care of. Anything else from anybody?
No, Your Honor.
The parents officially waive any jury trial request.
Mr. Cargill, did you join in that?
I do, Your Honor.
Mr. Buffkin?
I do. And Judge, just real quick, I mean, you can see it in the MSA, but there is supervised virtual visitation 2 times per week. Just,
Yep.
I don't think anybody mentioned that, but I just wanted to.
I did hear that.
Okay,
Between Ms.
sorry.
Blackwood and Mr. Cargill, I think we got that covered. Are you waiving jury?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mark, you waiving jury?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Ms. Riley, you're my last holdout?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. I think this is a phenomenal resolution. I am delighted these children have such a loving and huge village protecting them. And I find, Ms. Ellerman, since you signed this, I understand that you believe that each and every one of these agreements is in the best interest of these children.
Yes, ma'am. I do.
Ms. Riley, you concur?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to approve the agreement as set out in the mediated settlement agreement. I have acknowledged that each of the lawyers has waived on the record the jury demand and are waiving right to a jury. And I will see you guys for the entry on January 16th. Congratulations. That's wonderful. I'm really, really happy for everybody involved, most especially these children. Good job, everybody. Okay, y'all are off the hook and you don't have to work on a trial over the holidays. So,
All right.
All right. Thank y'all very much.